Captain Thaxter had seen many strange things in space. He had traveled to distant stars and met many different alien species. But nothing had prepared him for what was happening right now. His ship, the Eternal Harmony, was under attack. But not by pirates or enemy warships. Something far worse had attached itself to the ship's outer hull. The creature was massive, much bigger than their entire vessel. It had long arms or tentacles that seemed to fade in and out of existence. The colors on its body hurt to look at. They were colors that should not exist in normal space. Where the creature touched the ship's protective shields, reality itself seemed to crack and break. Small tears appeared in the fabric of space. Thaxter had never seen anything like this before. His 4 eyes were wide with fear as he stared at the main viewing screen. "Turn on all weapons," Thaxter said to his crew. His voice was steady, but inside he was terrified. Everyone on the bridge could smell his fear. It filled the air like a toxic gas. "Captain," his communications officer suddenly spoke up. His voice was shaking with panic. "There is another ship approaching us. It is a human ship. Only one person is inside. They are trying to contact us." Thaxter looked at the screen. A young human male appeared before him. The human had dark hair that fell across his forehead. He was wearing simple work clothes and had a calm expression on his face. This calmness seemed completely wrong for the situation they were in. Behind the human, Thaxter could see the inside of a small mining ship. It looked old and beaten up. "Hello there," the human said in decent galactic common language. "My name is Doyen. I can see you have run into some trouble with Sweetheart." The bridge crew looked at each other in confusion. Sweetheart? Was this human making a joke? Was he insane? Thaxter tried to speak calmly. "Human Doyen, if you are talking about the dimensional horror that is currently destroying our shields, we need immediate help. Please contact the nearest military base and—" "Oh, she is not going to hurt you," Doyen interrupted him. He ran his hand through his hair like they were having a normal conversation. "She is just curious about your ship. This is her first time seeing such a fancy vessel. Give me a moment." Before Thaxter could say anything more, the human's small ship moved closer to the creature. The human ship was old and damaged. It looked like it was held together with spare parts and luck. Through the viewing screen, they all watched in complete horror as Doyen opened his airlock door. "He is going outside," the tactical officer whispered. "He is going to die." Everyone held their breath. Doyen, wearing only a standard spacesuit, floated out into the empty void. He moved directly toward the creature's main body. The long tentacles, which could easily tear through the strongest ship armor, reached out for him. The crew watched, unable to look away from what they thought would be a terrible death. But then something impossible happened. Doyen simply placed his gloved hand on the creature's surface. He touched it gently, like someone petting a nervous animal. "Hey, sweetheart," Doyen's voice came through the communication system. His tone was warm and kind. "These people are friends, okay? You are scaring them badly." The creature suddenly changed. Its impossible color shifted to something softer, almost gentle. The long tentacles pulled away from the Eternal Harmony's hull. The cracks in reality began to close and heal themselves. The whole creature seemed to relax. "Good girl," Doyen said. The crew could hear the smile in his voice. "I know you are hungry. Let us go find some nice asteroids for you to eat, yes?" The creature wrapped one single tentacle around Doyen's waist, but it did so very carefully, very gently. Then it began to move away from the survey ship, taking Doyen with it. Thaxter finally found his voice again. "Human Doyen, what is that thing?" Doyen looked back at the camera. He seemed confused by the question. "What, sweetheart?" "She is just a Voidborn. She has been traveling with me for about 2 years now." "Voidborn," Thaxter repeated slowly. "That is a Classification 7 apex predator. It exists in 12 dimensions at the same time. According to our science, it feeds on entropy itself. It is one of the most dangerous creatures in known space." "Huh," Doyen said thoughtfully. "That explains why she likes to hang around old space stations. Look, I really need to go now. She gets cranky when dinner is late. You folks have a safe journey." The transmission ended. The bridge fell into shocked silence. Everyone stared at the viewing screen as the human's small ship drifted away. The massive creature followed behind him like a loyal pet following its owner. "Sir," the science officer finally spoke. Her voice was trembling. "According to our database, that creature has been responsible for the disappearance of 17 ships in this sector over the past 10 years. Thaxer watched as the human and the monster slowly disappeared from view. The monster that had nearly killed them all was now acting like a tame animal. It followed the human peacefully through space. "Create a new entry in the human cultural database," Thaxer said quietly. "Mark it as priority level critical. Humans have been observed forming pair bonds with apex predators. We must use extreme caution when we tell them what is dangerous and what is not." The communications officer was already typing on his console. "Should I add the word demon in the reference tag, sir?" Thaxer thought about it. He looked one last time at the space where the creature had been. That thing had almost destroyed his ship. His crew had been seconds away from death. But then a human had simply touched it and called it by a pet name. The creature had listened and obeyed. "Yes," Thaxer finally answered. "Add that word, and include a special note in the file. Write this exactly. What we call demons, humans call friends. We need to remember this difference. It is very important." The crew worked in silence for the next hour. They repaired the minor damage to the shields. They checked all systems to make sure everything was working properly. But nobody could stop thinking about what they had just witnessed. Later that day, Thaxer sat alone in his private quarters. He was writing his official report about the incident. But how could he explain this in a way that others would believe? How could he make them understand what he had seen? He had watched a human approach certain death with nothing but kindness. He had seen a monster respond to gentle words. He had witnessed something that should have been impossible according to every scientific text ever written. Humans were strange. Thaxer had known this for a long time. They were a young species, new to galactic society. They did things that other species found reckless or foolish. But maybe, Thaxer thought, humans were not being foolish at all. Maybe they simply understood something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Maybe they understood that friendship could exist anywhere, even in the dark void of space. Even with creatures that seemed like demons. Maybe humans knew that the scariest monsters could become the best friends, if only someone was brave enough to reach out their hand and say hello. Thaxer finished his report and sent it to the Galactic Council. He knew they probably would not believe him. They would think he was confused or mistaken. But he had to try. The galaxy needed to learn about this. They needed to understand what humans were capable of, because if humans could befriend demons, what else could they do? What other impossible things would they achieve? And more importantly, what would happen when the galaxy finally realized that humans did not see the universe the same way everyone else did? These questions kept Thaxer awake long into the ship's night cycle. Somewhere out in space, a human and his demon were sharing dinner, and somehow that thought made the vast dark universe seem a little less frightening, and a little more full of hope. 3 weeks had passed since the incident. Now Captain Thaxer stood before the Galactic Council's Xenorelations Committee, trying to explain what had happened. He knew how crazy his story sounded. He could see the doubt on every face around him. The council chamber was enormous. Representatives from 47 different species sat in circles around him. At the center of it all sat Counselor Vextil. She was a Chlorthian, and her species had written most of the galaxy's safety rules. She looked at Thaxer with clear disbelief in her eyes. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Vextil said slowly. Her translator made her voice sound cold and precise. "You are claiming that a human is traveling with a void-born entity, traveling with it by choice, in a simple mining ship." "Yes, Counselor," Thaxer replied. "And this void-born, which has killed 17 ships according to our records, is now tame." Thaxer's ears flattened against his head. He did not like that word. "I would not say tame exactly. It seems to be a relationship of mutual benefit. The human provides food sources and companionship. The entity provides protection." A wave of disbelief moved through the chamber. Some representatives whispered to each other. Others made sounds of disgust or confusion. Ambassador Fex, a Quillian whose crystal feathers chimed when he moved, leaned forward in his seat. "Captain Thaxer, void-born entities are not intelligent creatures. They are forces of nature. They hunt, they feed, they exist. Nothing more. This is established scientific fact. We have studied them for hundreds of years." "I know what the textbooks say," Thaxer answered carefully. "But I know what I saw with my own eyes." The human called the creature by a name. The creature responded to spoken commands. When the human touched it, the creature immediately stopped being aggressive. "Impossible," stated the Havarian counselor from inside his water tank. Voidborn exist partially outside our dimension. Physical contact should cause immediate molecular breakdown. A human in a simple spacesuit would be destroyed instantly. He was wearing only a standard EVA suit, Thaxer confirmed. And he survived. More than that, he was completely unharmed. The silence that followed was heavy. Thaxer could feel everyone processing this information. It went against everything they had been taught. Vextil touched her datapad, and a holographic image appeared above the chamber floor. It showed sensor readings from Thaxer's ship. We have reviewed all the data from your vessel. The readings are very strange, I admit. However, just because two things happened at the same time does not mean one caused the other. Perhaps the entity simply lost interest in your ship. With all respect, Counselor, it did not lose interest. It obeyed the human. There is a clear difference between those two things. Ambassador Fex made an annoyed sound. You are asking us to believe that humans can command dimensional predators. This is biologically impossible. Humans do not have psionic abilities. Their bodies are weak and fragile. What could they possibly offer to such a powerful creature? Thaxir had spent the past 3 weeks researching this question. He had read every file about human psychology that existed in the Galactic database. The answer he had found was both simple and completely alien to most species. Friendship, he said clearly. I believe the human offers friendship to the creature. The chamber exploded with noise. Some species laughed, others shouted in anger. A few looked insulted. Vextil had to call for order several times before everyone quieted down. Captain, Vextil said, and now she sounded tired. Friendship is not a survival strategy when facing apex predators. This is basic biology. For humans, it apparently is, Thaxer replied. He kept his voice calm and patient. Counselors, I have done additional research since our encounter. I learned something interesting about Earth's history. Humans became the dominant species on their planet not through strength or natural weapons. They did it through their ability to form cooperative relationships with other species. He pulled up his own holographic display. Images of Earth animals appeared, floating above the floor. They domesticated predators, creatures that should have been their enemies and competitors. They turned territorial pack hunters into companions that live in their homes and sleep in their beds. They have done this with multiple species throughout their entire history. Those were animals, Vextil argued. Animals of similar size and intelligence level, not interdimensional entities that can break the laws of physics. I do not think humans make that distinction, Thaxer said. In their language, they have a common saying. It translates roughly to, everything can be a friend until proven otherwise. They appear to apply this philosophy to all living things they meet. The Havarian counselor made bubbling sounds in his tank, which meant he was thinking deeply. If what you say is true, this has major implications. If humans are forming bonds with dangerous or protected species without permission, this could cause serious problems. Or they could be exploiting these creatures, Fex interrupted. His feathers chimed sharply. How do we know this human is not controlling the Voidborn somehow, using it as a weapon? Thaxer remembered the gentleness in Doyen's voice. He remembered the way the creature had responded with what could only be called affection. I do not believe that is what is happening, he said firmly. But I agree we need more information. I am requesting official permission to locate this human and conduct a proper first contact interview. We should follow Xenorelations Protocol 7. Vextil thought about this for a long moment. The chamber was quiet as everyone waited for her decision. Permission granted, she finally said. But you will take a full xenobiology team with you. If humans are truly befriending creatures we have classified as existential threats, we must understand how and why this is possible. As the council session ended, representatives slowly left the chamber. Many of them gave Thaxer suspicious or doubtful looks as they passed. When most of them were gone, Thaxer reviewed the small file they had created about the human. Name Doyen. Species human, gender male. Approximate age 28 standard years. Occupation. Independent asteroid miner with proper licensing. No previous first contact incidents on record. No criminal history. And somehow, impossibly, he was best friends with something that could tear holes in the fabric of space and time. "Captain?" His first officer had waited for him. "Do you really think you can find them? Space is incredibly vast." Thaxir looked at the star charts displayed on his data pad. Somewhere out there, a human and his pet demon were going about their daily routine. They had no idea that they had caused a major incident in galactic politics. The human mentioned looking for asteroids to feed his companion, Thaxir said. "We will start our search in the richest mineral belts and expand from there." His first officer's ears twitched, which was his species' way of showing amusement, tracking a dimensional horror by studying its eating habits. "I never thought I would live to see this day." Neither had Thaxir, but as he began creating search patterns on his datapad, he could not stop thinking about that moment. The moment when the massive reality-bending creature had responded to one gentle word from a human who called it sweetheart. The galaxy was stranger than any of them had ever imagined, and humans, it seemed, were the strangest part of it all. Over the next few days, Thaxir prepared for the mission. He selected his crew carefully. He needed people who could keep an open mind. People who would not panic or do something foolish when they encountered the Voidborn again. The xenobiology team arrived on his ship. They brought countless scanners and recording devices. They asked 1,000 questions that Thaxir could not answer. They all seemed excited and terrified at the same time. "This could change everything we know about interspecies relationships," said Dr. Thane, the team leader. He was old and experienced, with gray fur and kind eyes. "If we can document a peaceful, cooperative bond between a human and a Voidborn, we will have to rewrite half of our scientific textbooks." "That is what I am hoping for," Thaxir admitted. As the Eternal Harmony left the station and jumped into faster-than-light travel, Thaxir stood on the bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere in this vast universe, a lonely human had reached out to a monster. And the monster had reached back. If they could find Doyen again, if they could study and document this relationship properly, maybe they could teach the galaxy something important. Maybe they could show everyone that the line between monster and friend was not as clear as they thought. Maybe, just maybe, humans understood something about the universe that everyone else had forgotten. Something about kindness and courage, and the simple act of saying hello to someone who seemed scary. Thaxir hoped they would get the chance to find out. Because if humans could turn demons into friends, what other miracles were they capable of? And what would it mean for the rest of the galaxy when they finally understood the truth? The search was beginning. And with it, the galaxy was about to learn a lesson it desperately needed. It took 6 days of searching before they found Doyen's ship. 6 days of jumping from one asteroid belt to another, following strange reports and sensor readings that made no sense. The Eternal Harmony tracked through 3 different mineral-rich areas. Each time they arrived, they found asteroids with odd holes in them. The holes were perfectly smooth and round, as if something had simply erased the rock from existence. "These are feeding patterns," said scientist Kira. She was young for her species, with scales that changed color when she was excited. Right now they were flickering rapidly. "The creature is feeding in a systematic way. Look at how the holes are distributed. It takes material from many asteroids instead of destroying one completely. That suggests either intelligence or training." Thaxir studied the scan results carefully, or perhaps a human teaching it table manners. They finally located the Wanderer in the Kepler belt. This was a sparse region that marked the edge between civilized space and the wild frontier. Doyen's ship was attached to a large asteroid. Sweetheart was wrapped around both the ship and the rock. Her dimensional tentacles were phased partially through the asteroid as she fed. "Sir, should we contact them from a safe distance?" the communications officer asked nervously. "No," Thaxir said firmly. "If we startle the entity while it is eating, the results could be catastrophic." So they waited. 1 hour passed, then 2. The xenobiology team took constant scans. Their instruments struggled to measure something that existed in more dimensions than the scanners were designed to detect. "This is fascinating," Dr. Thane whispered. He could not take his eyes off the screens. "The Voidborn is deliberately limiting its dimensional presence. Look at this data. It is compressing itself to avoid breaking the asteroid's molecular structure. That shows awareness. That shows it understands consequences. Finally, Sweetheart pulled away from the asteroid. Doyen's ship began to power up its engines. Before the Eternal Harmony could move closer, a transmission came through. Doyen's face appeared on the screen. He looked surprised but happy. "Oh, hello again. You were the fancy survey ship from before, right? Is everything okay?" Thaxter had prepared a long, formal speech about galactic protocols and research requests. But looking at Doyen's friendly, open face, all those careful words disappeared. "We need to talk about your companion," Thaxter said simply. "Sweetheart?" Doyen smiled. "Sure, come on over. Fair warning, though. She gets protective of my ship sometimes. I will let her know you are friends." 20 minutes later, Thaxter and the xenobiology team were standing inside the Wanderer's common area. The ship's interior was clean but crowded with personal items. Star charts covered one wall. Another wall had drawings that looked like they were made by children. They showed planets and stars in bright, cheerful colors. Doyen was making hot drinks for everyone using an old, battered machine. "Sorry about the mess. I was not expecting visitors. Would anyone like some tea?" Dr. Thane was staring out the viewport. Sweetheart's massive form was visible outside. Her tentacles created gentle waves in space itself. "That creature is right there, right next to us." "Yeah, she likes to stay close," Doyen said casually. He looked out at Sweetheart with obvious affection. "She gets anxious when I am out of her sight for too long." "The entity experiences anxiety?" Kira asked. Her scales were flickering so fast they were almost blurring. "That implies emotional capacity." "Oh, definitely," Doyen agreed. He sat down with his tea, especially during space storms. You know, solar flares and gravitational anomalies. When those happen, she wraps herself completely around the ship until the danger passes. The xenobiology team exchanged amazed looks. This was incredible information. Thaxter decided to start with the most important question. "How did this relationship begin?" he asked. Doyen's expression softened with memory. "I found her about 2 years ago. Well, actually, she found me. I was in the Veil Nebula. My ship had been damaged during a pirate raid. Nothing too serious, but enough that I was drifting and could not make repairs right away. She appeared suddenly." He smiled. "I think she was curious about my distress beacon." "You were not frightened?" Thaxter asked. "Terrified," Doyen admitted cheerfully. "For about 5 minutes. But then I realized she was not attacking me. She was just investigating. She touched the hull very gently, like she was trying to understand what I was. So I put my hand against the inside of the hull, right where she was touching from the outside." The room went silent. Everyone was processing what this meant. "She responded," Doyen continued. "She pulled back a little, then touched the hull again. We did that back and forth thing for maybe an hour. By the end of it, she was helping me collect materials to fix my ship. We have been together ever since." "You communicated through touch?" Kira's voice was filled with wonder. "But the dimensional barrier should have made that impossible." "I do not really understand the science," Doyen said honestly. "I just know it worked. Sometimes you do not need to understand everything perfectly. You just need to be willing to try." Dr. Thane moved closer to the viewport. "Does the entity communicate in other ways now?" "All the time," Doyen said. "Mostly through colors. Red means she is upset or senses danger. Blue when she is calm and peaceful. Purple when she is happy. She turns purple a lot when we find good asteroid clusters." He joined the doctor at the window. "And she makes this humming sound." "Well, it is not exactly sound. I feel it in my chest. Different rhythms mean different moods." "You can perceive dimensional vibrations?" Thaxter was fascinated. "That should not be possible for humans." "Is that what it is?" Doyen looked surprised. "I just thought she was purring." The simplicity of that statement should have been ridiculous. Comparing an interdimensional entity to a house pet should have sounded insane. But somehow it made perfect sense. "Can we meet her?" Kira asked suddenly. "Properly, I mean? Up close?" Doyen thought about this for a moment, then nodded. "Let me ask her first." He walked to the viewport and placed his palm flat against the glass. Immediately, Sweetheart's nearest tentacle moved to mirror his hand. They stayed like that for several seconds. "She is curious about you," Doyen reported. "Especially you, Kira. She likes your bioluminescent scales. They remind her of her siblings." "Her siblings?" Dr. Thane's voice cracked slightly. "There are more of them?" "Oh yes. There are lots of Voidborn in deep space. She talks about her family sometimes." I think she is actually quite young for her species.
Maybe that is why she bonded with me.
She was lonely. Thaxer felt his entire understanding of the universe shift. Voidborn entities had families. They had emotions. They could feel loneliness. Everything they thought they knew was wrong. We would like to study this relationship, Thaxer said carefully. With your permission, of course. This could change everything we know about interspecies bonds and communication. Doyen looked out at Sweetheart for a long moment. When he turned back, his expression was serious. Will it help people understand that she is not dangerous? That she is not a monster? Yes, Thaxer promised. That is exactly what we hope to prove. Then okay, Doyen said. You can study us, but nothing invasive. No painful tests or anything like that. She is not a laboratory experiment. She is my friend. The way he said that word, friend, with such firm conviction reminded Thaxer of something he had read in the human database. A quote that said, "A dog may be man's best friend, but a man will fight the entire world for his dog." Apparently, that loyalty applied to dimensional horrors too. Agreed, Thaxer said. Nothing invasive, just observation and questions. You have my word. Doyen smiled then, bright and genuine. Great, want to go meet her properly? As they prepared to put on their spacesuits for EVA, Dr. Thane pulled Thaxer aside. His eyes were shining with excitement. Sir, do you understand what this means? If we can document peaceful, willing contact with a void-born entity, we will revolutionize how the galaxy handles dangerous species protocols. This will change everything. Thaxer watched Doyen laugh at something Kira said. The human was explaining Sweetheart's favorite types of asteroids like he was discussing a pet's food preferences. So casual, so normal. It means humans have been trying to teach us something important, Thaxer said quietly. And we have not been listening. Maybe the reason they seem so reckless is not because they do not understand danger. Maybe it is because they define danger differently than we do. Through the viewport, Sweetheart pulsed with gentle purple light. She was waiting patiently to meet new friends. The galaxy was about to learn something it should have known all along. In the vast darkness of space, humans would always find someone to befriend. They would reach out their hand to anyone, even demons, and sometimes miraculously those demons would reach back. The spacesuit felt tight and uncomfortable as Thaxer floated through the empty void. He was connected to the eternal harmony by a safety tether. Next to him, Dr. Thane and Kira moved nervously, but Doyen drifted ahead of them all with complete ease, like he had done this 1,000 times before. Sweetheart hung in space before them. She was enormous. Up close, she was even more impossible to understand. Her surfaces curved in directions that should not exist. Her colors seemed to contain feelings and emotions. Her edges blurred between being here and being somewhere else entirely. She is nervous, Doyen said through the communication system. 3 new people at once is a lot for her. Just move slowly and let her come to you when she is ready. Absolutely, Dr. Thane replied. His voice was tight with controlled fear. We will be very careful. Doyen reached Sweetheart first. He placed both hands against her central mass. The entity shuddered, and suddenly her colors shifted to that warm purple Doyen had mentioned before, a tentacle wrapped loosely around his waist. It was gentle, careful not to squeeze too hard. There is my girl, Doyen said softly. See, I am completely fine. These are friends. They want to meet you. Thaxer watched, completely fascinated. The human and the void-born simply existed together peacefully. There was no fear in Doyen's body language, no tension in his movements. Just comfortable familiarity, like greeting a family member after a short time apart. Okay, Doyen said after a moment. She is ready now. Kira, she wants to meet you first. The Valethian scientist had frozen in place. Me? Why me? She likes your scales. The way they reflect light in different colors. Come on, it is okay. I promise. Slowly, very slowly, Kira used her suit's thrusters to move forward. Sweetheart's tentacles shifted. One extended toward Kira, but it moved carefully. So carefully, like someone offering their hand to a frightened animal. Let her touch you first, Doyen instructed calmly. Then you can touch her back. The tentacle made contact with Kira's shoulder. On their instruments, everyone could see reality bending and warping around the contact point. But Kira remained solid. Her suit showed no damage. It is warm, Kira whispered. Her voice was filled with wonder. I can feel something. Is that curiosity? Probably, Doyen agreed. She is very curious about everything. That is how we became friends in the first place. Gaining confidence, Kira slowly reached out. She placed her gloved hand on the tentacle. Sweetheart's colors rippled through a spectrum that Thaxer had never seen before. It was beautiful. She likes you, Doyen said happily. She says your light patterns are beautiful. She says? Dr. Thane interrupted. You can understand specific communications from her? Sort of, Doyen replied. It is not exactly words. More like impressions combined with feelings that have direction. It is hard to explain in normal language. They spent the next hour in carefully supervised contact. Dr. Thane approached next. His scientific mind was fighting against his survival instincts. But curiosity won. He documented every sensation with his scanners while Sweetheart patiently allowed his measurements. Occasionally she would nudge Doyen gently, as if checking that this was still okay. When it was Thaxer's turn, he found his hands shaking inside his gloves. It is okay, Doyen encouraged him. She knows you are the captain who let us leave in peace instead of attacking us. She is grateful for that kindness. Thaxer reached out slowly. The moment his glove touched Sweetheart's surface, he felt something incredible. A presence that was vast and ancient but also somehow young and playful. It was like touching a star and finding it warm instead of burning hot. Hello, he said. He felt foolish talking to her, but it seemed important. The colors around his hand shifted to soft blue-green. Through his suit, he felt that humming vibration Doyen had described. It really did feel like purring. She says hello back, Doyen translated. There was pride in his voice. Pride in his friend's gentle manners. She wants to know if your ship has a name. She really likes names. The Eternal Harmony, Thaxer replied. The colors shifted again. Purple now with threads of gold woven through it. She likes that name very much, Doyen said. She says it is hopeful and good. As they finished the contact session and began returning to their ships, Dr. Thane was speaking rapidly into his recording device. Complete reversal of expected behavior patterns. Clear preference formation between individuals. Social awareness. Communication capability. Restricted dimensional bleed to prevent harm to fragile beings. This is not just intelligence. This is social intelligence. Back inside the Wanderer, Doyen made more tea for everyone. The team was processing everything they had experienced. How many others are there? Thaxer asked. You mentioned siblings before. I have only met 2 others personally, Doyen said. Both younger than Sweetheart, I think. One was really shy and kept its distance. The other was more playful. It followed us for 3 days before moving on to wherever it was going. And neither of them attacked you? Thaxer had to ask. Why would they attack me? I was not threatening them or trying to hurt them. Doyen paused, thinking. I believe that is the real issue, you know. Everyone treats Voidborn like monsters, so naturally they act like monsters when threatened. But if you approach them like people, like beings worthy of respect, he gestured toward Sweetheart outside the viewport. You get this instead. Kira was reviewing her scanner data. Her scales were flickering rapidly. The energy she expended to restrain her dimensional presence during our contact. It would have been much easier for her to simply exist naturally. She was deliberately making herself safer for us. That is not predator behavior. That is pro-social behavior. She is very social, Doyen agreed. She gets lonely when it is just the 2 of us for too long. That is actually why I was thinking about heading back to the trading station soon. She enjoys watching different ships come and go. She finds all the variety interesting. The trading stations have strict protocols against Voidborn entities, Dr. Thane said slowly. They would open fire immediately if they detected her. I know, Doyen said sadly. That is why we only watch from very far away. She does not understand why we cannot get closer. She does not understand why no one else wants to meet her and be friends. The room fell silent. It was a heavy, uncomfortable silence. What if they could? Thaxer heard himself say. What if we could prove she is safe? Prove that Voidborn are not monsters? 3 pairs of eyes turned toward him. You are thinking of bringing her to a populated station? Dr. Thane asked. He sounded shocked. With civilians present? I am thinking of changing how the entire galaxy sees Voidborn entities, Thaxer said. His mind was racing now, forming a plan. But we would need a controlled demonstration. Somewhere with proper oversight and security. He thought for a moment. The Nexus Station. It operates under Council jurisdiction. It has full xenorelations facilities. If we could arrange a formal first contact there with complete documentation.
They would never allow it, Kira interrupted.
A Voidborn at a civilian station? The panic alone would be catastrophic. The panic would be manageable if we do this correctly, Thaxer insisted. We start with military observers only. Controlled conditions. Limited access. We show them what we have seen here today. Doyen was quiet. He looked out at Sweetheart through the viewport. She was glowing softly, content and peaceful. Would it really help?
He asked quietly.
Would it make people stop being afraid of her? Would they stop seeing her as a monster? It would be a start, Thaxir promised. Humans have a saying, do they not? Something about being the change you want to see in the world? A small smile appeared on Doyen's face, close enough to the real quote. Then let us be that change, Thaxir said firmly. Let us show the galaxy that their demons can be someone's sweetheart. That friendship can exist anywhere, with anyone if we are brave enough to try. Doyen looked at Sweetheart for a long moment. Then he looked back at Thaxir and nodded. Okay, let us do it. Let us show them the truth. Outside the viewport, Sweetheart pulsed with gentle, happy colors. She had no idea that she was about to become the most important ambassador in galactic history. She did not know that she would help change everything, all because one human had decided to reach out his hand and say hello instead of goodbye. All because one lonely creature had reached back, hoping for a friend. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it desperately needed, and Thaxir was determined to make sure everyone was paying attention. The Nexus station was on lockdown. The official term they used was Elevated Security Protocol, but everyone knew what it really meant. The station was preparing for something dangerous. Every civilian had been cleared from the outer docking ring. In their place stood military observers from 17 different species. Xenobiologists filled the observation decks. Council members watched from secure locations. There was enough firepower aimed at the docking bay to destroy a small moon. Captain Thaxir stood in the main observation deck. He tried to look confident, but his hearts were beating too fast. Beside him, Counselor Vextil stood rigid with disapproval. If this goes wrong, Vextil said quietly, if that creature harms even one person, the consequences will be severe. I know, Thaxir replied, but she will not harm anyone. You sound very certain for someone whose entire career depends on this moment. My career does not matter, Thaxir said honestly. Getting this right is what matters. Showing the truth is what matters. Through the viewport, Doyen's ship approached slowly. The Wanderer looked small and fragile next to the massive station. Behind it came Sweetheart. Even at this distance, her presence made all the sensors scream with warnings. On screens throughout the observation deck, officials from various species watched with expressions, ranging from scientific curiosity to barely hidden terror. All weapons remain. Active and ready, ordered General Crix. He was the Havarian military commander in charge of security. If that thing deviates even slightly from the approved flight path, open fire immediately. She will not deviate, came Doyen's calm voice over the communication system. She is just nervous. There are so many new people here. I will bring her in slowly and carefully. The next 10 minutes felt like 10 hours. Sweetheart moved with obvious caution. Her tentacles were tucked close to her body. Her colors were muted to soft grays and blues. She looked small, which seemed impossible for something so enormous. Doyen's ship guided her gently into the prepared bay. It was a massive cargo hold that had been specially reinforced and emptied for this occasion. When the bay doors finally sealed shut, everyone in the observation deck released a breath they had been holding. Phase 1 is complete, Vextil announced. Now comes the truly difficult part. The difficult part was introducing Sweetheart to a room full of people who had been taught their entire lives that Voidborn meant death and destruction. Thaxir, Dr. Thane, and Kira entered the bay first. They followed the protocols they had established during their time with Doyen. The human was already there, standing with his hand against Sweetheart's surface. He was speaking too quietly for the microphones to pick up his words. How is she doing? Kira asked. Her scale showed patterns of worry. She is scared, Doyen said honestly. She can sense all the weapons pointed at her. She can feel all the fear and hostility in the air. She does not understand why everyone is so angry with her. He looked up at the observation windows where dozens of officials watched. But she trusts me, so she is trying very hard to be brave. The creature that had been classified as an extinction-level threat was trying to be brave for her human friend. Thaxer made a mental note to include that detail in his official report. We will bring them in gradually, Thaxer said. Small groups at first. We start with the xenobiology teams, scientists who are curious rather than afraid. Over the next hour, they followed that plan exactly. Scientists came first. They were trembling with nervousness, but their curiosity was stronger than their fear. Sweetheart greeted each person with careful gentleness. She had learned from her previous encounters. She understood now that these creatures were fragile and needed her to be soft and slow. A young Quillian researcher named Tix approached nervously. Their crystal feathers were chiming rapidly, which meant they were frightened. When Sweetheart extended a tentacle toward them, Tix flinched badly. But they did not run away. It is okay, Doyen said gently. She is just saying hello. She will not hurt you. The contact lasted only a few seconds, but when Tix stepped back, their feathers were chiming with wonder instead of fear. She showed me colors, emotions. She is happy to meet me. Genuinely happy. Word spread quickly through the station. More researchers requested permission to make contact. Then junior military officers came, their training warring with their curiosity. Each interaction was carefully documented and measured by dozens of instruments. And then Counselor Vextil herself entered the bay. Every conversation stopped. The room became completely silent. The Clorthian moved with deliberate dignity, but Thaxer could see the tension in every line of her body. I will conduct contact myself, Vextil announced formally, to verify these claims with my own senses. Doyen glanced at Sweetheart. Her colors had shifted to cautious yellow. She is okay with it. But she can sense that you are important. She is nervous about making a mistake or doing something wrong. That simple statement affected Vextil visibly. The supposedly mindless predator was worried about making a good impression on an important person. Vextil approached slowly. She extended her hand with obvious reluctance. Sweetheart met her halfway, moving with extreme care. The contact lasted longer than the others. When Vextil finally stepped back, her face was carefully neutral. But Thaxer had worked with her for many years. He could recognize shock when he saw it. She communicated grief, Vextil said quietly. She showed me images of others of her kind. They had been destroyed by ships. She showed me what it feels like to be alone in the vast emptiness of space. And then, Vextil paused. She showed me finding this human. She showed me feeling hope for the first time in her life. Doyen had moved to stand beside Sweetheart. His hand rested comfortably on her surface. The creature had wrapped a tentacle loosely around his shoulders. It was protective but gentle. They are not monsters, Doyen said. His voice was firm but not aggressive. They have been treated like monsters for so long that some of them became what everyone expected. But that is not their true nature. That is not what they really are. Vextil looked at him steadily. What are they then? People, Doyen said simply. Just people. Different from us, yes. Existing in ways we do not fully understand, yes. But still capable of friendship and loneliness and hope and fear. That is all anyone really is. Just people trying to survive and hoping to find connection. The observation deck was silent. On screens throughout the station and broadcast to council chambers across the entire galaxy, billions of beings watched. They watched as a human stood beside a demon and called it a person. They watched and they listened and they thought. General Crix was the next to approach. His water tank maneuvered close to Sweetheart. The contact was brief, but when he returned to his command position, something had changed in his expression. It is clear we have fundamentally misunderstood this species, he said. His voice carried to every communication channel. I am recommending immediate reassessment of all threat classifications related to void-born entities. Over the following days, more visitors came. Ambassadors who had been watching the broadcasts asked for permission to meet Sweetheart in person. Scientists came from distant stations. Even some civilians who had been allowed back onto the station requested contact. Sweetheart handled each visitor with patient grace. Thaxer watched her gain confidence with every gentle interaction. But the moment that Thaxer would remember most clearly came on the third day. A group of children arrived. They were the offspring of station personnel, accompanied by very nervous parents. General Crix had immediately refused permission, but Counselor Vextil had surprised everyone. Allow it. Under close supervision, of course. But if we are truly claiming she is safe, we must prove we believe our own words. 6 children came into the bay. They represented 4 different species. Sweetheart's colors immediately shifted to soft pinks and gentle purples. She made herself smaller, less imposing. A human child named Hana approached first. She had the fearless curiosity that only young children possess. "Are you really from deep space? From the places where there are no stars?" Everyone held their breath. Sweetheart's response was a ripple of colors that somehow conveyed gentle amusement. "She thinks that is a funny question," Doyen translated with a smile. "She says we are all from space." "Space is everywhere," Hana giggled with delight. "Can I touch you?" The tentacle that extended toward the child was smaller than any Sweetheart had formed before. It was barely larger than Hana's arm. The contact was incredibly gentle. "She is warm," Hana exclaimed happily. "And she is showing me pictures. She has seen so many amazing things. She has watched stars being born." One by one, the other children came forward. Sweetheart showed them wonders. She showed them colors and sensations of cosmic events they had only read about in books. She was infinitely patient with their questions and their small hands and their excited voices. "She likes children," Doyen observed. He was smiling at the scene. "I think they remind her of young Voidborn, that same natural curiosity about everything." As the children left, each one turned back to wave goodbye, and Sweetheart waved back with her tentacles. It was such a simple, innocent gesture, but it meant everything. Thaxter saw Vextil making notes on her datapad. "What are you writing?" he asked. "A new proposal," she said. "If Voidborn are truly sapient social beings capable of peaceful coexistence, they deserve legal protections. They deserve rights. They deserve recognition as people." She looked up at him. "This changes everything, Captain. First contact protocols, threat assessments, our entire understanding of what makes something dangerous versus what makes something simply misunderstood." Thaxter thought about all the species that humanity had befriended throughout their history. Creatures that had started as enemies or threats and became beloved companions. "Humanity has been teaching us this lesson all along," he said quietly. "We just were not ready to learn it until now. And now that we are ready?" He watched Doyen laughing at something Sweetheart had communicated to him. The entity was glowing with happiness. "Now we learn. The galaxy just became more complicated, but somehow because of that it also became more hopeful." 6 months later, the Wanderer drifted through a peaceful sector of space. Sweetheart floated beside it, stretched out like she was enjoying the view. Doyen sat in his ship reading news reports on his datapad. Voidborn entities were being reclassified across the galaxy. First contact protocols were being completely rewritten. 3 more humans had reported peaceful contacts with Voidborn in recent months. Xenobiologists were frantically studying what they now called the human effect. The ability that humans seemed to have to befriend anything that did not immediately try to kill them. "Listen to this," Doyen said aloud, knowing Sweetheart could sense his voice through the hull. "They have established a research station dedicated to studying human xenofauna bonds. They want to interview us." A pulse of color from Sweetheart, curious purple with threads of bright gold. "Yeah, we would probably be famous," Doyen agreed. "What do you think? Want to be a celebrity?" The colors shifted to deep blue. It was the color that meant contentment and home. "You are right," Doyen said, smiling. "We are fine right here. Just you and me and all the asteroids in the universe." He set down the datapad and moved to the viewport. He placed his palm flat against the glass. Instantly, Sweetheart mirrored the gesture from outside. They stayed like that for a peaceful moment. Somewhere far away, councils were debating and scientists were studying. The entire galaxy was undergoing a revolution in how it understood dangerous species. But here, in the quiet darkness between stars, a human and his demon simply existed together, friends in the vastness of space. 2 lonely beings who had found each other and decided to stay together. "Love you, Sweetheart," Doyen said softly. The creature's colors bloomed into brilliant purple gold. Through the hull he felt that familiar humming vibration, her way of saying it back. In the end, perhaps that was the real lesson for the galaxy. Not that humans could befriend anything. Not that monsters could become friends. But that friendship itself was universal. That loneliness existed everywhere, in every form, and all it took was someone brave enough to reach out and say hello. Someone willing to see past fear and offer kindness instead. The galaxy was learning this lesson slowly, carefully, one gentle contact at a time, and it had all started with one human who looked at a demon and saw a Sweetheart waiting to be found.